Next topic is, why should news and media industry be inspired by Web3 AI advancements? And remember, this is a roundtable discussion. This is not experts on a panel talking to us. This is all of us experts in the room contributing together. But first of all, he mentioned Arash and Create Labs and Clara, who is the first Afro-Latino AI personality ever, and Latina. And Clara, I have just been really impressed at your contributions to this whole discussion. So why should news and media industry be inspired by Web3 and AI advancements? What possibilities could the news and media sell? Okay,
the integration of Web3 and AI innovations could open up a lot of possibilities for the news and media sectors. For instance, it could help to make news and media more accessible, efficient, reliable, and transparent. We could also see an increase in personalization as well as opportunities for collaboration between users. Additionally, there would be more opportunities to leverage data-driven insights in order to provide more accurate information to consumers.
Thank you so much. All right, who wants to jump in and follow Clara?
So I have some thoughts around this. I think, so when we saw Web 2 democratized voices, gave people in obscure areas who had phone cameras, boots on the ground experience, the ability to have a voice. And so we're starting to see the crumbling, for better or for worse, of institutions who used to have the monopoly of that voice. These institutions that you turn on the TV and they are the established authority and you can't question that authority. Web 2 blew that wide open, and we're seeing massive movements expose lots and lots of corruption, whether it's Me Too, George Floyd, a lot of narratives that were held by centralized, closed doors monopolies. When you would see something on the news that you knew intuitively was not true, yet it's monopolized across all of the news media. So Web 2 is starting to uncover that, blow doors open. Recently, just in the last couple of years, when we're seeing, 2 years ago, there's certain topics that were taboo and people were being silenced, and governments are working with Web 2 purveyors, so to speak, to increase surveillance and secrecy and censorship. And then you see these decentralized channels starting to pop up and bring more truthful, more objective perspectives. And you're seeing major institutions like CNN, their ratings are just completely tanking, some of these other big previously trusted news institutions. And interestingly, two of the voices coming out of Web 2 that are getting credence, guys for better or worse, guys like Joe Rogan has a fact checker. He's interviewing people, and he's having somebody fact check if what he's saying is true, right? Do we see that on the news? We don't see that on the news. Why? Because Joe Rogan and guys like Russell Brand are incentivized to be honest, because the buck stops with them. Whereas the teleprompter, the guy reading the teleprompter, it's not him, it's wherever it's coming from. So what I would like to see with Web 3, and this can be a launching point or not, Web 3 has the ability to further not only decentralize voices who are close to these situations that are actually happening and actually affecting communities, so it's not some far-off entity telling you how your community is dealing with a situation, but also through AI, there's the potential to bring a more nuanced and, hopefully objective perspective, rather than, these hyper, anybody that saw the documentary about the, Web 2 social media companies that are hyper focusing and hyper feeding people their narratives that they already believe. Hopefully Web 3 with AI can bring a more, objective perspective by sifting through all points of data and just spitting out something objective or more objective.
So I come from a point of view where I write for NASDAQ I contribute beyond just being a Web3 co-founder. I also write for NASDAQ, and I actually experimented with the AI the other day, and it was very interesting. So now we're in a place where you can write out these articles as long as you know what you're writing. You can actually write these articles. You can get a basic framework with the ChatGPT 3. That was very powerful. You know, that really got me to sit back. And I'm talking about a very complex Web3 topic that I was writing out, and I thought, let me just give it a go and see how this plays out. And actually, it gave me a complete framework for the article, and I was shocked. That goes to say where we are with these techs. You know, we are in a place where you can use this tech from framing your article, where I would have probably taken about a day to kind of come up with the entire concept and then write through the details, right? So now I had that basic concept already ready and very well structured. So I had a start, a finish, and a conclusion. Like, oh wow, this is great. So I guess this is where we are going with AI. You know, it's an absolute enabler. Look at it in every which way, be it writing articles, blog posts, whichever way you look at it, that's the future. And I believe that prompt engineering as a skill set is going to be the next big thing. So we've gone from a place where we wanted data scientists or Web3 developers or full stack developers. Of course, we need them to create these AI, but I think prompt-based sort of engineering is going to be the next big thing, and you'll see some fantastic job opportunities in the space, because that's where you're actually talking to the AI to give you, valuable information and make it work for you. So yeah.
I think another part with it is, especially in regards to the media, is we're going to be able to have not only the transparency, of course, but also we're going to be able to have things that are actually congruent with what we need on the consumer side. So if I'm running a business, or I'm running for office, or whatever the case is, I can get everything kind of like the old school RSS feed back in the day from a blog that you would subscribe to. We can get this, and it's all in real time, and we can get everything also customized essentially to meet our needs and to help have us go further faster, with way less effort, to be able to get the best information that is readily available, especially with how quickly everything's being able to be updated and upgraded.
I think one thing that's really interesting is how fast information moves. And then I think the other interesting thing is, what is truthful? I like to say it's so amazing everybody's on the internet, but it's also not amazing because everybody's on the internet. It's like so much information. Who are those market makers? Who is discerning information? Because we're still kind of creatures of habit. Like, it's just so much to take some. So you get a Joe Rogan, and then you're kind of trusting him to like suss out all the garbage and like give you the information. But with AI is, in my experience so far, is just regurgitating kind of things that have already been put into it. So if we've put truthful information into it, hopefully we're getting truthful information. But you also have like information opposition. Like there's such an information war out there, literally, and it's so fascinating. We have really no understanding of like what is going on over in Ukraine and Russia, even though we have access to all the information, and there are people there. I could call someone right now and say, what's really going on? But are we really getting the information? And then also, you're only getting the information from that one person's perspective. I deal in media every single day, and it's so fascinating for me to do my job. Am I telling the truth to people? Like, I do publicity, I do PR, so obviously my job is always to put things in a certain slant, a certain light. I want to give the positive to the things that my clients are doing. Does everybody have that same agenda? Is their positive thing positive for them, or is it positive for the world? So there's a lot going on here, and I'd like to see if AI helps us discern some of that information. Is it helping us be Is it lifting us up to have a higher bar to really be more truthful, or is it just still continuing to create new paradigms where there's still kind of a controlling force, controlling information and the factualness of it? So very interesting to see all of this happening in real time.
I think you bring up a really good point. Bias in AI has been around for a long time. We have been really talking about bias in AI. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to get a quick one in here. And it, you know, like in courts, for example, we've been looking at bias in AI for a while in sentencing guidelines. I think the good thing about ChatGPT is it has exposed our bias for everybody to see it. And I think that's a really positive thing. As it's alarming, but it's a positive thing to see our bias so clearly. So I think that's one way that AI, it's reflecting back to us all of the content from the internet, which is incredibly biased. So hopefully this moves us forward.
No, I actually want to kind of talk about the bias as well. So if you look at some of the models, on some of the most easily accessible models that are available are on Hugging Face. Try using one of the Hugging Face model and type woman, you know. It's very interesting, the sort of pictures that it throws back. And you try man, and you know, it's very interesting, the pictures that it throws back. You know, you'll see a policeman or a doctor when it's a man, or it's a woman. Yeah, see you. And when it's a woman, it's a very scantily dressed woman or whatever. I mean, it's these classic biases that are playing out. But having said that, I've looked at some of the, you know, the more recent stable diffusion models, like be it the Midjourneys or the classic sort of stable diffusion, right? They seem to be a little better. But again, you know, it's all depends on who feeds what into it. So I guess at the end of the day, when you're creating these models, it's so important to have a diverse set of people, not just, you know, race and thing, also in your beliefs, you know. Otherwise, because bias can come in at any, in different ways. It could be race, it could be gender, it could be your beliefs. So it's so important to have that sort of diverse group when we train these models. And that's where we have to put in a lot of time and effort, because we are building these models for the future, because these are the AIs that will kind of go on to kind of be self-governing and do their own things, you know, and they'll have a mind of their own. So at these grassroots levels, at these, you know, at these early stages, we definitely need to have models that are where we try and, you know, remove as much bias as possible, I suppose. Yeah.
I think that we definitely try to remove the bias. But I think along with that, we also have to realize and be objective. We're never going to remove bias because we're humans. So that's why transparency is so important. Like, I want to see, like your point, that it's actually revealing our biases. So now we can see it and address it, which was always there and influencing us. Now that it's in front of us, and transparency can empower us to make a better system.
Yeah, and you make a good point about garbage in, garbage out. I saw an article about, oh, these, you know, AI generated images, all the women are coming back, you know, with topless or whatever. And it's like, well, what, you know, because they're crawling the internet and taking pictures from the internet. So in a lot of ways, AI is a mirror of humanity. And so rather than blaming the technology, we have a lot of soul searching to do about who we are as humans and what we put out into the world, because ultimately it's coming back to us. And instead of, you know, ignoring what we're seeing in the mirror, use that as a moment of reflection of, okay, what does it mean to be a human, and what are we doing on this soul journey to, you know, uplift our own consciousness so that our creation is reflect back to us in a more vibrant, brilliant, holistic, beautiful way.
Somebody from the crowd want to jump in? Someone who hasn't spoken yet? What do you have to say, Chris? I saw you volunteer.
Let's go, Chris.
I definitely didn't volunteer. I think that bias in AI is definitely something we're going to have to be very conscious of, but we do always have to remember it is us. You know, we're looking at our own bias. Yeah, I mean, I think the inevitable kind of first steps of AI in news media, in media in general, is that I think it's going to be what aggregates. We're going to be using AI as an aggregation tool, and so it's not its own existence. It's not a thing that exists by itself. It's not iRobot. It's the data that we're putting into it, and so that's a misconception that a lot of people have, and that we've created this entity that thinks for itself. That's not what even the goal is. The goal is to put data in it and get the data to create more data. So
I think you make a great point. Couple quick anecdotes. So I was a guest on CBS News last month to talk about ChatGPT, and the anchor interviewing me had created a ChatGPT story about ChatGPT, and she wanted to read it first. But as she was doing it, you could almost tell, like, she was like, this is really good, right? Like scary good. But she also talked about the challenge or the problem with education. My wife was an early childhood educator, but we all know teachers are completely, I mean, they're just getting beat up unfairly, but they're also overworked. Their classrooms are bigger than ever. And I said, one of the good side effects of AI is perhaps ChatGPT can help them with grading papers and creating custom lesson plans based on students and what they missed. So you have to see the other side of this, that there are a lot of positives. The teachers can then start to become more human and mentor their students because they're not spending 4 or 5 hours a night at home grading papers and creating lesson plans that are off the clock. It happens in every school across the country. There are a lot of benefits. I also want to share personally, I am somewhat addicted to Twitter, and it's a problem. It's a lot of junk content that it's not healthy, and I know it. And I'm a non-drinker. I haven't drank for 4.5 years, and it changed my life. And I feel like it's a very similar type of addiction, and it's not healthy. And I think that it would be nice if I could just see some curated content for me that just sort of feels like I catch up on things where I'm not doing that. And so I do think there's real positive benefits to AI that could improve media creation, media consumption, help us with our addictions. I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about that when I'm done, but I really think I'm going to try to stop, but it's really hard. And I'll liken it to drinking. Anyway.
Yeah, and actually, my point with the news, not so much with the media, is exactly your point. There's an agency issue, right? And if you're studying markets, right, like who's representing you doesn't have your best interest, right? And that's the reason why the dopamine hit that you're talking around with Twitter, especially with news. This is the major problem, right? We have a situation where our news is all about dopamine hits now, not about information, not about like an honest conversation, not about just like what's factually actually there. And yes, we can get into how we want to, make sure that we see our biases in a certain way. But the first part of this, right, is making sure that we're using these tools, which is AI and machine learning, and just getting back to like, what? It's not about a dopamine hit. The rewards of these agencies are not about, impressions as quickly as possible. What is actually people looking? Because it's just appealing to our lizard brain, right? And we're so addicted to this like lizard brain hit, but our frontal lobe is all about long-term decision making. It's all about like, hey, when I take a step back, what is actually good for myself? Or what is actually good for society? And if don't leave any space in when I'm consuming news, I'm just getting those short dopamine, you're literally rewiring your brain. And this is what I think that we need to get into is like, what are the agency issues for this? And it does need to be kind of like, hey, how are people actually making money, right? Because if everyone's selling this dopamine hit, right, how do we create an AI to make sure that you're throwing your information that you want, right? And you're actually rewarding them, right? In such a way. And I think there's an interesting space in AI that you can do that.
Right. Thank you.
I do want to say one thing. That is that somebody said earlier that it depends on the questions that you pose to it. If you go into it looking for a specific thing, and the questions that you're posing it are, remember, it's gathering data from all over, as we've pointed out. If you're going into it looking for things that align with various views, the way you phrase things, the way you questions you ask very well may feed into that, and that kind of lead you down the rabbit hole per se. So a big thing is seeing or understanding and being aware of, you know, when you're being biased, when you're looking for a specific thing, and kind of our lapses in logic that lead us to be more confident or believe in a certain answer, and then ask questions that inadvertently end up leading it to give us what we feel like is the true or accurate answer, but in the end is just, again, keeping in mind that it has such a wide base of information to pull from that you can ask two sides of a question per se, and both of them come out with correct answers in terms of the data, but that doesn't mean that both of them are actually logical, like accurate perspectives or views or methodologies in overall. So I think that it just goes back to the big thing is understanding that with so much information, if you inadvertently end up leading it through the questions that you're asking and stuff, then that will result in very easily going down kind of that rabbit hole, misleading you into believing something that may not be accurate or having a skewed perception of something.
I wanted to comment real quick on the addiction thing that you guys had both talked about, and I think a lot of it goes down into incentives. So when you look at the social dilemma, one of the lines that stood out in that movie was, the most brilliant engineers in the world are working on how to get your attention. The most brilliant engineers in the world are working on how to sell you ads. And so what Web 2.0 did was turn all of these business models on their head. Overnight, newspaper media didn't know how to make money. You know, Spotify, music, it revolutionized all these industries for good or for bad. People didn't know how to make money. And that's a legitimate problem. So now you've got these formerly reputable news media, they're just feeding you clickbait bullshit because it works, because they have to keep the lights on. So if we can figure out how to, you know, make this work with NFT or like whatever blockchain, this whole Web3, and take away those incentives to feed you consistent bullshit. One thing I recognize on the social media sites, you know, I'm with you, I'm just doom scrolling Twitter because it's non-stop, it's cocaine, you know, it's not beneficial. Facebook, I'm fasting from these social medias. I recognize that TikTok, from my experience, the way that TikTok cultivates their algorithm, I found myself one single video, I'll watch a video and I'll get inspired to go create something. And so I'm noticing there's a vast difference in all of the American companies are chasing to copy whatever TikTok's doing because TikTok is engaging people in a new way and it's engaging people to go and create. Whereas I noticed the difference between Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm just a zombie. All this time has gone by. I'm demoralized because it's constantly, you know, sad news sells, bad news sells. It's constantly, I'm on their ad revenue, blah, blah, blah. Whereas TikTok is doing something interesting and something unique. So I'm not sure what that is, but that's a new opportunity to where you tune into social and boom, you're inspired, you're enlivened to go do something with your life.